This article you sent about the psychology of Christmas, I gotta say, color me intrigued. I mean, we all know Christmas is a big deal, but like digging into the why, the WHY behind all those warm fuzzies, I think that's gonna be super interesting.
It really is. And the article kind of starts out by highlighting something, pretty basic about us humans, our
Yeah.
social nature, right?
Mm.
And Christmas just seems to amplify that need for connection.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like even if you're not like the biggest Christmas person, there's still that pull to be with family or friends. It's almost like society's little reminder that, hey, connection is actually really important.
Exactly. And the article takes it even a step further and suggests that those warm, fuzzy feelings aren't just from being together, but also from the traditions that we hold dear.
Okay, now you got me. Explain that one. How do traditions play into this whole psychology thing?
Well, think about it. Specific foods,
Yeah.
decorations, even just like the order you open presents. These traditions, they often become rituals, passed down through generations. They're like these little touchstones to our past, to our family history.
So it's more than just like, oh, we've always done it this way. It's about feeling connected to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And that ties right into nostalgia. The article points out how reminiscing about past Christmases, that contributes to all those warm, fuzzy feelings. But it's not just about the past, right? It's also about creating new traditions, knowing that you're building memories for future nostalgia.
That's beautiful, this like ongoing cycle of making meaning. But the article also gets into the nitty gritty of our brains too, right? Like the actual chemistry involved in all this holiday cheer.
It does. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. Let's take gift giving, for example. Have you ever noticed that rush of satisfaction you get when you find the perfect gift for someone?
Yeah.
Well, that's dopamine, a neurotransmitter that's associated with pleasure and reward, and it's kicking in.
Hold on. So my brain is basically giving me like a high five for being a good gift giver.
In a way, yes. It's a fascinating example of how our biology reinforces behaviors that promote social bonding, which, gift giving definitely does.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. And speaking of those feel-good chemicals, the article also talks about Christmas music.
Ah, yes. Christmas music, it's like this direct line to our emotional centers. It's not just the nostalgia factor, though that's certainly powerful. Studies show that familiar holiday melodies, they can actually trigger the release of oxytocin, which is often referred to as the love hormone.
Wait, so belting out carols with my family is actually strengthening our bond on a chemical level? That's amazing and a little bit mind-blowing, to be honest.
It really highlights the profound influence music has on our emotions and our social connections, especially during a time like Christmas. But we can't ignore the flip side, can we? The article does acknowledge that this season, it's not all jingle bells and sugar plums for everyone.
Yeah, there's definitely that pressure to create this like perfect Christmas, which can be, financially and emotionally draining.
Absolutely. And for people who are already struggling with loneliness, maybe grief, the holidays can actually exacerbate those feelings. So while the article does focus on the positive psychology of Christmas, it's super important to recognize that this is only one part of the story.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So we've got this fascinating mix here, this social need, tradition, brain chemistry, and then the reality that Christmas can actually be challenging for some people. Where do we go from here? What's the takeaway for our listeners so far?
I think the key here is awareness. Now that we're kind of unpacking these psychological factors, it begs the question, can understanding the psychology of Christmas actually help us have a more meaningful experience?
Yeah.
I think the answer is yes, but we need to dig a little deeper. One thing that really stood out to me in this article was its take on gift giving. It's such a huge part of Christmas, but it can get so, I don't know, complicated emotionally.
Oh, yeah, totally. I think we've all felt that pressure at some point to find the perfect gift, right? Like you're
Yeah.
trying to express how much you love or appreciate someone through like a perfectly wrapped box.
And the article gets into that, suggesting gift giving goes beyond just a simple exchange of stuff. It can be this symbol of connection, a way to strengthen those social bonds we were talking about earlier.
So there's like an element of I'm thinking of you kind of wrapped up in every present.
Exactly. And that act of choosing something specifically for someone else, well, that triggers that dopamine release we talked about. So it's rewarding for both the giver and the receiver.
Makes you wonder if the lead up to gift giving is just as important as the actual giving part, like all those weeks of planning, trying to find the perfect thing.
That's a really good point. The anticipation itself, it builds excitement and reinforces that connection. But the article also makes it clear that gift giving isn't always totally selfless. Sometimes there can be social pressure or even competition involved.
Oh, I've totally been there. Like, it turns into this thing of who can give the most extravagant gift or be the most thoughtful.
Exactly. And that can lead to so much stress and, financial strain,
Yeah.
which really takes away from what the holidays are supposed to be about.
Mm-hmm.
The article encourages us to be mindful of those pressures and really focus on the true meaning behind giving a gift, expressing that you care about someone,
It's about quality, not quantity. Thoughtfulness over just spending a ton of money. But hey, let's switch gears for a second and talk about something the article touched on briefly, the historical and cultural influences on Christmas. It's pretty wild to think how much it's changed over time.
It really is. The article pointed out that some traditions, you can actually trace them back to ancient winter solstice celebrations way before, Christianity even existed.
Right. Like a lot of cultures celebrate the return of light after the darkest part of the year. It's like this universal human need to find hope during winter.
Exactly. And those themes are still a big part of Christmas today. Then, of course, you have the Christian tradition of celebrating Jesus' birth, which brought in a lot of the religious symbols and rituals we connect with Christmas now.
It's amazing how all those influences have mixed together and changed over time to create the Christmas we know today.
It shows how powerful traditions are and how we're constantly adapting them to fit what we need and value today. But speaking of adapting, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, right?
What about commercialization? It's a huge part of how we experience Christmas now.
Oh, it's everywhere. From all those ads to that pressure to buy the latest gadgets and stuff, it can feel like Christmas is just about buying things.
It's true, commercialization has had a big impact on Christmas. It shapes what we expect and how we act. But the article wants us to think critically about that. Be conscious consumers and make deliberate choices about how we engage with all the commercial stuff.
So not necessarily rejecting it completely, but just being more thoughtful about it. Exactly. It's about finding that balance, enjoying some of the material aspects, but staying connected to the deeper meaning. At the end of the day, the article emphasizes that Christmas is about connecting with people, being generous, and celebrating the spirit of the season.
And I think understanding the psychology behind it all, the need for connection, traditions, even our brain chemistry, it can help us have a more genuine and fulfilling experience.
Couldn't agree more. It's about taking control of our own Christmas and shaping it to match what we truly value. So as we head into the holiday season, it makes you wonder, how can we use all this knowledge?
That's a great question. And I think a good starting point is, well, I was thinking maybe starting with our spending habits. Like, it's super easy to get caught up in buying all the gifts, but maybe this year we try focusing more on experiences instead, like going out with friends or even making homemade gifts.
I love that idea. Experiences create these lasting memories, and they usually make you feel more connected than just getting another thing. And those homemade gifts, they show how much thought and effort you put into them. Like we were saying before, it taps right into that whole dopamine reward thing.
Exactly. It's about moving away from all that buying, 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 and focusing on connecting with people. It's about quality, not quantity, right? And speaking of quality, maybe this year we try to really prioritize quality time with the people we care about. Put the phones down, step away from the screens, and really just be in the moment.
That's such a great point. In a world with like a million distractions, just being present is a gift in itself. And remember, quality time doesn't have to be some big fancy thing. It's about sharing meals together, maybe playing games, telling stories. Those simple things are what really create strong bonds and memories.
Yeah, it's about getting back to the heart of Christmas, those core values of love, generosity, connection, the things that sometimes get lost in all the holiday craziness. Which actually reminds me of something you mentioned earlier about like how Christmas isn't always sunshine and rainbows for everyone.
That's right.
Mm.
We can't forget that everyone experiences the holidays differently. If you're dealing with loneliness or you're grieving, or maybe you're stressed about money, it's okay to admit that and ask for help. Reach out to your friends, your family, or even a therapist.
And if you're someone who, is feeling that Christmas spirit, remember to be kind and compassionate to everyone around you. Just reaching out to someone, listening to them, or lending a hand can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. It's about building a sense of community, remembering we're all in this together, especially during a time of year that's all about togetherness. So as we go into this holiday season, knowing all this cool stuff about the psychology of it all, what's the one big takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
I think it's this. Christmas can be whatever we want it to be. If we understand how it all works, the power of traditions, gift giving, our need for connection, even the tough parts, we can make choices that lead to a more meaningful experience for ourselves and the people we love.
I love that. It's about finding that sweet spot between what we've always done and trying new things, between enjoying ourselves and being mindful, between our own needs and thinking about everyone else. Christmas is this amazing mix of traditions, culture, and personal experiences built up over centuries. Let's embrace all of that and create a holiday that shows the best of who we are.
What a great way to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks so much for sharing all your insights. I feel like I'm seeing Christmas in a whole new light.
It was my pleasure. Happy holidays.